I've always been the kind of person who falls into internet rabbit holes, not the harmless ones about cat memes or baking hacks. I'm talking about the dark corners where conspiracy theories rot like forgotten fruit. But nothing prepared me for what I found that night. It started with a link buried in a forum thread about Vatican secrets. Most of it was junk, reptilian popes, time-traveling priests, the usual nonsense. But this link felt different. The user wasn't shouting for attention. Their post was cold, factual, like they were dumping evidence, not selling a story. The URL led to a bare-bones site labeled Vatican Archives, unrestricted. The first document was a scan of an ancient manuscript, Latin text, rough English translation. It claimed Jesus had descendants, a bloodline the church tracked through genetic markers. They weren't hiding it to protect faith, the document said, but to control power. The last living heirs were monitored, kept from influence. One family, the Merovingians, vanished in the 1800s. The Vatican stored records in a vault beneath Castel Gandolfo. It read like a history textbook, not a Dan Brown novel. Then I found the exorcism files. Cases where possessed people didn't just scream or curse, they changed. A girl in Naples turned snow white overnight, her eyes shifting to gray. A monk spoke a language linguists said was structurally impossible for human vocal cords. Some reports ended abruptly, no longer in need of assistance. The worst part, the site had hundreds more files. A list of Vatican-owned sites hidden from maps. A compound in Nevada, a research station in Antarctica, an island in the Pacific, with no public records. I shut my laptop, my hands shaky. I wasn't scared, not yet. But I felt like I'd peeked behind a curtain I wasn't supposed to know existed. I told myself I wouldn't go back. For 2 days I avoided my laptop like it was cursed. But curiosity is a hungry thing. When I finally caved, the site was still there. No warnings, no glitches, just that black screen and its list of secrets. I clicked a section labeled Non-Human Encounters. The first file was a 14th century report about monks sent into Rome's catacombs. They'd heard voices in sealed tunnels. What they found wasn't grave robbers. The monks described figures standing perfectly still in the dark, human-shaped but wrong. Too tall, limbs too long. When one monk stepped closer, every figure tilted their heads in unison. No eyes, just hollow faces. The Vatican sealed the tunnels and called them observers of unknown origin. Next, a medical file from 1963. A man who hadn't eaten or drunk anything in a decade. Villagers thought he was a mystic or mad. The Vatican locked him in a facility, ran tests. His cells regenerated like he was healing from nothing. After 6 months, he vanished. No broken doors, no struggle, just gone. Then I found the Gospel of the Unseen. It claimed human perception is limited, like a veil over reality. People who awaken to the truth disappear, not killed, just unmade. The Vatican locked it away, calling it too dangerous. By midnight, I was numb. I scrolled to a list of hidden Vatican sites, a research station in Antarctica, a Nevada desert compound, an Ethiopian vault supposedly holding the Ark of the Covenant. Places that shouldn't exist. I almost closed the tab until I noticed one file had vanished, the one about a relic no one could describe. Not deleted, erased like it never existed. That's when I felt it, a cold, quiet dread, not fear of being watched. Fear of realizing how much I didn't understand. But the site still had a section called Miracles and Anomalies. I clicked, a 1905 report. A priest died, woke up 12 hours later, and wrote about wandering an empty world frozen in time. A 1978 account of nuns finding a church that vanished after they touched a shifting, unreadable book. A 1852 confession booth, where a voice spoke a dead language. Each file was a brick in a wall I couldn't climb over. I shut my laptop. My hands were steady, but my head wasn't. The Vatican wasn't just hiding history. They were curating reality itself, and I'd barely scratched the surface. I told myself I was done. The missing file about the indescribable relic was proof enough. Someone or something didn't want me knowing more, but the sight kept pulling me back, like an itch in my brain I couldn't scratch. The final section was labeled The Lost Experiments. I clicked, already regretting it. The first file detailed a 1938 Vatican study. Monks taught an ancient, impossible language that erased their memories of other tongues. The more they spoke it, the more their old selves faded. The manuscript's words changed as they read them, like the language was alive. The Vatican locked it away, calling it not meant for us. Then there was the mirror, an old artifact from Poland that didn't reflect the present, it showed the past. A blind man saw his younger self perfectly. The Vatican hid it, terrified. The last line stuck with me. The mirror doesn't reveal the past, it remembers. The final document broke me. A banned prayer from a Spanish monastery. Every time someone recited it, answers appeared, written on walls, books, pews, not divine, just blunt. The last response you are not supposed to ask. I closed the site for good that night, not out of fear. Not because I thought shadowy figures would hunt me down, but because I finally understood. The Vatican wasn't just hiding secrets, they were pruning reality, cutting away truths that could unravel us. They weren't evil, they were gardeners tending a fragile world. I never went back. The laptop stayed shut. Life went on, work, coffee, traffic, normal things. But sometimes when I'm alone, I think about that library in Egypt, pristine and buried, or the mountain in South America with its sealed cave. I wonder what's inside those places, what's watching from the edges. The truth is, I don't want to know. Some doors shouldn't be opened, and the Vatican, they're not villains, they're janitors, sweeping the dark corners so the rest of us can sleep at night. But I still dream about that mirror. I know how this sounds. Another internet rando claiming he's uncovered a cosmic conspiracy. I'd roll my eyes too if I weren't the one knee-deep in it. But here's the thing. If you've ever wondered why the Vatican owns some of the most advanced telescopes on Earth, or why they're suddenly cool with the idea of aliens being our space brothers, you might want to keep reading. It started on a dead-end dark web forum, the kind where basement dwellers argue about government mind control, lasers, and fake moon landings. Buried in a thread about Vatican astronomy was an onion link. Most of those lead to malware or rickrolls, but this one, it opened to a text-only directory labeled Vexopool, Vatican Exopolitics. The first file was a scanned memo from 1957, typed in Latin with a shaky English translation. It mentioned celestial visitors described as neither angelic nor demonic. The Vatican called them entities of unknown origin, and assigned a secret group, the Obscura Custodia, to study them. Not study like lab rats, study like diplomats. Then came the slideshows. One outlined contact protocols, rules for if the church ever had to go public about aliens. Lines like the faithful must not question their place in creation, and disclosure must align with doctrine. Made my skin crawl. This wasn't about hiding UFOs, it was about spin. How to tell billions of believers that we're not special, that God's plan might include little green men. Photos followed, grainy shots of saucer-shaped shadows over Vatican City. A folder labeled Interfacing Events had case studies. The 1917 Fatima apparitions in Portugal, where thousands claimed to see the Virgin Mary, but the docs hinted at atmospheric anomalies instead. A 1950 solar vision by Pope Pius XII reclassified as a non-terrestrial interaction. Even the Mount Graham Observatory in Arizona, run jointly by the Vatican and scientists, was flagged for analyzing unidentified celestial phenomena. By midnight, I'd fallen into the hole. I saved everything to an encrypted drive, half expecting Men in Black to kick down my door. But nothing happened. No black SUVs, no hacked accounts. Just me, a cold coffee, and a chilling realization. The Vatican wasn't denying aliens. They were preparing for them. The last file I opened that night was a transcript. 2 voices, no names. One asked, "Are they aware of us?" The other replied, "They acknowledge us, but not as we acknowledge them." I didn't sleep. I just stared at my ceiling, wondering what they knew that we didn't. I didn't sleep for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that transcript. They acknowledge us, but not as we acknowledge them. What did that even mean? Were the Vatican and whatever out there talking, trading secrets, praying together? I needed answers, and the dark website was my only lead. But when I tried to go back, the link was dead. Panic hit first. Had they found me, tracked my IP? I checked my encrypted drive. The files were still there. I calmed myself. Dark websites vanish all the time. This wasn't personal, probably. I shifted tactics. If the Vatican was prepping for aliens, there had to be clues in plain sight. I dove into their public astronomy projects. The Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope VAT in Arizona, their partnership with NASA, even Pope Francis's vague speeches about the universe's wonders. All boring. Until I found a 2014 interview with a Jesuit astrophysicist, Father Paul Muller. He'd said, the discovery of extraterrestrial life would deepen our understanding of God's creation. Normal enough. But then he added, but we must ask creation for whom? That phrase gnawed at me. For whom? I went back to the files I'd saved. One folder, labeled Project Lumen, had satellite images of a Vatican-owned facility in the Nevada desert. No address, just coordinates. I plugged them into Google Earth, a barren patch of dust and rock. But the shadows didn't match the terrain. Too sharp, too geometric, like something was buried there. Then I found the audio clips. They were hidden in a subfolder, labeled Vox, Intelligentsia. No dates, no context, just static, then a voice, not human, not robotic, something in between, speaking in a language that buzzed like radio interference. My skin prickled. I played it again. Beneath the noise I heard Latin words, lux in tenebris, lucet, light shines in the darkness. The next file was worse. A video, low resolution, timestamp 1997. A dim room with a stone floor. A figure in a black robe stood beside a table. On the table was a thing, metallic but organic, like a seashell forged from liquid steel. The robed figure touched it, and the object unfolded, blooming into a shape that hurt my eyes. The camera cut off. I felt sick. This wasn't conspiracy theory stuff. This was evidence, and I had no idea what to do with it. That's when the glitches started. First, my laptop fan screamed like a jet engine at 3 a.m. for no reason. Then my Wi-Fi dropped every time I opened the encrypted drive. One night I woke up to my screen glowing blue, an error message in Italian, accesso negato, access denied. I hadn't opened anything. I almost quit, but then I found the Directive 12 file. It was a policy draft, written in dry bureaucrates. In the event of confirmed non-human intelligence NHI, the Church must ensure theological continuity, mitigate existential dissonance, phased acclamation via papal encyclicals. My hands shook. They had a playbook. Step 1, leak stories about friendly aliens. Step 2, frame contact as a divine reunion. Step 3, rewrite scripture to include NHI as celestial brethren. But the last line froze me. Should acclamation fail, proceed to Protocol Jericho. No explanation, just Jericho. I needed to talk to someone, but who? My friends would think I'd lost it. The media, they'd laugh. Then I remembered the forum post from the ex-Vatican archivist. I dug it up, a Reddit thread from 2013. User at Sacra Veritas had written, "Some archives aren't history, they're futures." I messaged him. He replied in broken English, "Stop looking, they know." I typed back, "Who's they? Obscura Custodia." His response, "Worse, the ones they answer to." Then his account deleted itself. I threw my phone across the room. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But the files didn't lie. The Vatican wasn't just hiding aliens. They were taking orders. The last thing I found that night was a photo, black and white, 1965. A group of cardinals standing in the Vatican gardens, smiling. Behind them, blurred but unmistakable, was a tall figure in a silver suit. No face, no hands, just a smooth, featureless shell. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat there staring at that photo, wondering how many popes had shaken hands with something else. I didn't tell a soul. Not my roommate, not my therapist, especially not Reddit. The photo of the cardinals and the silver figure burned in my brain, but I knew what would happen if I shared it. Mockery, threats, or worse, silence. The world wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. But the files kept pulling me in. One night I cracked open the encrypted drive again. Buried in a folder labeled Vox Intelligentsia was a video titled lumen_day.avi. I hesitated. My laptop fanned word like a warning. I clicked. The video showed a dim, candlelit room. A man in a cardinal's robe sat at a wooden desk speaking to the camera in Italian. Subtitles flickered. The time approaches. They have shown us the path. We must prepare the flock. Behind him, a shadow moved. Tall, thin, glinting like polished metal. The cardinal didn't flinch. He kept talking, calm as a priest at Sunday Mass. Their light is divine. Their truth, our salvation. Then the feed cut to static. I rewound, paused, zoomed. The shadow wasn't a trick of the light. It had shape smooth, elongated limbs, a head too small for its body. No face, no eyes, just presence. That's when I found the last document, Protocol Jericho. It wasn't a plan. It was a threat. The file outlined steps to reset, global consciousness, if humanity rejected the Vatican's narrative. Phase 1, discredit whistleblowers through media campaigns. Phase 2, trigger a spiritual crisis via staged miracles. Phase 3, digital purification, erasing all traces of NHI from the internet, books, even memory. The final line, in extremis, deploy Lumen DEI. I didn't need Google to know Lumen DEI meant light of God. But the worst part? The document was dated last year. I drove to the desert that weekend. Not Nevada, too obvious. Somewhere quieter. A patch of nowhere east of Phoenix. I needed air, space, silence. But as I stood under the stars, all I could think about was the Vatican's telescope scanning those same skies. Not for God, but for them. When I got home, there was an email. No subject, no sender. Just a link to a live stream, Pope Francis giving a sermon in St. Peter's Square. Normal stuff, until he said, "The universe sings with life, seen and unseen. We are not alone in God's creation." The crowd cheered. I felt sick. They were rolling out Phase 1. I packed my laptop, the encrypted drive, every note I'd taken, and shoved them into a fireproof lockbox. Buried it under old camping gear in my closet. I didn't delete anything. Let them come. Let them try. But they didn't. Months passed. Life normalized. Work, Netflix, grocery runs. Then, one evening, the news broke. NASA announced credible evidence of microbial life on Mars. The Vatican tweeted a Bible verse. "In my Father's house are many mansions." I laughed. It was too perfect. Too timed. That night I dug out the lockbox. The drive still worked. The files hadn't changed. But when I opened the photo of the cardinals and the silver figure, I noticed something new. A reflection in a window behind them. A symbol carved into the glass. 3 circles interlocked, like a celestial chain. I'd seen that symbol before. In the Project Lumen folder, blueprints of the Nevada facility had the same mark on every door. On the cover of the Directive 12 file. Even etched into the artifact from the 1997 video. It wasn't a logo, it was a message. I closed the drive. For good this time. The truth, I don't know if the Vatican's talking to angels, aliens, or something older. I don't know if we're being protected or pacified. All I know is this. They've been planning for something bigger than faith, bigger than science. A future where the question isn't, are we alone, but who's in charge? And maybe that's why they've stayed silent. Not to hide the truth, but to control how we hear it. I still watch the stars sometimes. Wonder if they're watching back. Wonder if the Vatican's already drafted the press release. But mostly, I hope Protocol Jericho stays in its box. Because if the light of God ever needs to shine, I don't think it'll be for us. I spend too much time on the internet, not just scrolling through social media until my brain feels numb, but exploring the real internet, the dark corners most people never see. For 5 years, I've been fascinated by the dark web, not for anything illegal, but because I'm curious about what's hidden there. Most people think the dark web is just a place to buy drugs or fake IDs, but a big part of it is just weird stuff. Old videos, strange theories, and forums that haven't changed in 10 years. It's like finding a forgotten room where time stopped. I found the video by accident. I was on a forum about unsolved missing persons cases when I saw a post with no text, just a link. The title caught my eye. Route 20, 1996. Where did he go? Usually I'm careful about clicking random links, especially from anonymous users. But something about this one felt different. Older, not like the usual scary videos people share to shock you. The upload date said 2009, which is ancient in dark web terms. The video was grainy, like an old home movie from the 90s. You could tell by the way the man dressed, the colors, and the radio playing softly in the background. It showed a guy, maybe in his late 20s, driving down a dark highway. The timestamp showed May 16th, 1996. At first, nothing happened, just driving down Route 20 at night. If you've ever been on that road after dark, you know how lonely it feels. No streetlights, no gas stations for miles, just black sky and empty road. 6 minutes in, things changed. The video started showing static in the corners. The radio began switching between stations by itself. First a weather report, then a baseball game, then something else. A whisper between channels. The driver noticed and turned the radio off completely. That's when the light appeared. Not headlights or a street lamp. This was different. At first it hung high in the sky like a star, then suddenly dropped straight down, stopping in midair. The driver's breathing changed. You could hear it getting faster. The car slowed down, not stopping completely, but enough to see the surroundings more clearly. Trees, empty fields, and that light hanging still in the sky, like it was watching him. Then the video cut out for exactly 2.4 seconds. When it came back, everything was different. The car was stopped on the side of the road. The driver's door was open. The engine was still running, headlights on, but the man was gone. No struggle, no movement, just gone. The camera stayed on the empty driver's seat for another minute before the screen filled with static and the video ended. I watched it 3 times, not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. Everything about it felt real. The way he drove, the radio problems, how normal it all seemed before things went wrong. I've seen plenty of fake videos. This wasn't one of them. I needed to know more. His license plate was visible for a few frames. I searched every missing persons database I could find. Nothing. No police reports, no news stories. It was like he never existed. But Route 20 is real, and people have gone missing there. After watching the video, I couldn't let it go. Something about the guy, how normal he looked, how suddenly he vanished, stuck with me. So I did what anyone with internet skills and too much free time would do. I started digging deeper. First, I tried tracking down the driver. His license plate was visible for a few frames, so I searched missing person databases, old DMV records, even online forums. Nothing matched. Then I checked the timestamp, May 16th, 1996. If this was real, there should have been something. A police report, a family searching, a newspaper mention. But no matter how deep I dug, I found nothing. It was like he never existed. That didn't feel right. Even in the 90s, people didn't just disappear without leaving some kind of record. So I shifted focus. If I couldn't find him, maybe I could find others who had seen this video. The dark web is like a junkyard, layers of abandoned sites and forgotten pages. After hours of searching, I found a thread from 2011 on an obscure site dedicated to strange disappearances. Someone had posted a blurry screenshot from the video. The same car, same timestamp, same empty driver's seat. but the replies caught my attention. One user claimed they'd seen the full video years ago, but the version they described was different. In theirs, the light didn't just appear and vanish. It moved. They said it hovered above the car for a full minute, and before the guy disappeared, he had stepped out and looked up. That wasn't in the version I saw, which meant at least 2 versions were floating around. I started looking into Route 20 itself. At 3,365 miles, it's the longest highway in America, stretching from Boston to Oregon. It passes through rural areas, small towns, and miles of empty land. And over the years, many people have gone missing there. Some cases had explanations: car accidents, foul play, people who wanted to disappear. But a few were different. A truck driver in 1978 radioed about something bright in the sky before losing contact. His truck was found abandoned on the side of the road, engine running. A woman in 2003 whose car was found perfectly parked on the shoulder, doors locked, keys in the ignition. The last confirmed sighting was at a gas station 2 miles back. And most recently, a college student in 2017 who called his friend saying he saw something weird ahead of him. The call cut out, and he was never seen again. His car was found a week later, no signs of struggle. Different states, different decades, but all on Route 20, and all with one thing in common: unexplained lights in the sky. I went back to the post where I originally found the footage. The uploader was anonymous with no history, but they had enabled private messages. I took a chance and sent one. "Where did you find this video?" I didn't expect a reply. Most people on the dark web don't answer random messages, but 5 minutes later I got one word: archived. That was it. No explanation. I asked again, and this time they sent a link to another site. It wasn't a forum or video sharing site. It was an archive. A collection of hundreds of videos with similar descriptions. Unexplained event, Nevada desert, 1982. Unknown disappearance, Highway 50, 1991. Strange occurrence, Route 20, 2008. I clicked on the Route 20 video first. It was another version of the footage I had seen. Same timestamp, same car. But this one was longer, and at the very end, just before the video cut out, the man looked up. I didn't sleep that night. The third version of the video played on a loop in my head. The man staring up at the sky, the shadow beyond the headlights, the whispered help. By morning I'd made a decision. I had to see Route 20 for myself. The drive took 2 days. I packed a camera, a GPS tracker, and a notebook, telling myself I was just chasing a story. But deep down I knew it was more than that. The road stretched ahead, endless and quiet. As I crossed into Nebraska, I stopped at the coordinates from the 1999 case, where the man had been found wandering, convinced it was still 1996. The spot was unremarkable, a dirt pull-off surrounded by dead grass. But as I stepped out of the car, my phone buzzed. No signal. The air felt thick, like the world had paused. Then I saw it, carved into a wooden fence post. "They took him. They'll take you too." I snapped a photo, but when I checked it, the carving was gone. Just weathered wood. My hands shook. This is real. That night I parked near where the 2017 college student's car had been found. I set up my camera facing the road and waited. Hours passed. Nothing. At 2:43 a.m., the radio in my car crackled to life. Static. Then a voice, not from the speakers but from the back seat. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. The voice was the man from the video. When I turned, the seat was empty. But the radio kept playing fragments of the 1996 broadcast, overlapping with the college student's panicked call. "There's something up ahead. Looks like headlights flashed in the distance. A car approached, moving too fast. I grabbed my camera, but the road was empty. The headlights vanished. Then the light appeared. It dropped from the sky like the video, hovering silently. Not a drone, not a plane. It pulsed faintly, casting long shadows. My camera died. My phone screen shattered. I ran. The car door wouldn't open. The light drifted closer, and for a moment I saw them. Shapes in the glare, tall and still. The man from the video stood among them, head tilted back, eyes blank, then nothing. I woke up at dawn, slumped over my steering wheel. My GPS showed I'd been parked there for 12 hours. The camera's SD card was blank, but in my pocket I found a receipt from a gas station I'd never visited, dated May 16, 1996. I never went back to Route 20. The videos, the forum posts, the coordinates, I deleted it all. But sometimes at 2:43 a.m., my TV flickers to static. I see the man's face, his mouth forming words I can't hear. Behind him, shadows move. Last week, a new post appeared on the dark web. A single video, time-stamped last night. It shows a car parked on Route 20, door open, engine running. The license plate is mine. I don't answer when the radio whispers my name, but I keep driving. Ever since I was a kid, I've always been the curious type. It was a habit poking around where I wasn't supposed to be. One time I found my dad's old box of VHS tapes hidden in the attic. When I popped one in, it was just a bunch of old baseball games. But the thrill of finding something hidden stuck with me. That same curiosity followed me into adulthood, though it wasn't dusty attics I was exploring anymore. No, this time it was the dark web. Now, before you start judging, let me explain. I wasn't there to buy illegal stuff or engage in anything shady. It was that same childhood urge to explore, to see what's out there, to understand what others wouldn't dare to look at. The dark web felt like that attic full of hidden corners and forbidden things, and I wanted to see it all. I spent hours on forums, reading tech discussions, wild conspiracy theories, and bizarre urban legends. It felt like walking through a bad neighborhood at night, knowing I shouldn't be there, but the adrenaline pushing me forward. One evening I stumbled upon a chat room titled Underground Connections. The name was vague, but the number of users made it intriguing, so I joined using a throwaway username. At first it was just the usual, people talking about VPNs, sharing links to articles that the mainstream media ignored, discussing how to stay anonymous online. But then things changed. A user, DeepDive88, posted a message in caps. Who wants to see the real dark web? At first I didn't get it. Wasn't everything on the dark web supposed to be, well, dark? But there was something about how they said it that caught my attention. Everyone flooded the chat, asking what they meant, but DeepDive88 didn't respond right away. I waited, watching the messages fly by. A few minutes later, another message appeared. DM me if you're serious. I hesitated. This felt different, more intense, but curiosity got the better of me. I typed a private message. Hey, what's this about? Almost instantly I got a reply. Not here. Too many eyes. You want in or not? I thought about backing out, but that nagging curiosity kicked in. I typed back. Yeah, I'm in. Good, they replied. Stay in the chat. I'll send you a link in 10 minutes. Click it, but only if you're ready to see things you can't unsee. My heart started to race. This was no longer the harmless browsing I'd been doing. This felt like an invitation to something dark, something I wasn't sure I was ready for, but I was already too deep. I stared at the clock, watching each second tick by. My palms started sweating. Then 10 minutes later it happened. A message popped up, a link. The chat went wild. People started demanding answers, asking what it was, but there was nothing, just a link. I stared at it, my finger hovering over the mouse. My heart pounded in my chest. I was scared, but at the same time I couldn't look away. I clicked. The screen went black. For a moment I thought my computer had crashed, but then a video started to load. It was slow, like the connection was struggling to keep up. My heart was racing, my hands shaking as I stared at the screen. What was I about to see? I couldn't move. I couldn't stop watching. The video began with shaky footage, like it was filmed by someone holding a camera while walking. It moved through what seemed like a basement. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows against bare concrete walls. There was no sound except for the echo of footsteps. I could barely make out a door at the end of the hallway. It was industrial, Thick metal, no windows, just a heavy, dark frame. The camera stopped in front of it, and for a long moment it just stood there. Then slowly the door opened. I could barely make out the figure inside. They were sitting in a chair, tied up, motionless. I felt my stomach drop, my throat went dry. I didn't want to see this, but my eyes were glued to the screen, unable to look away. The camera moved closer, circling around the figure. As it came into view, I gasped. The man was blindfolded, a strip of duct tape over his mouth. His clothes were dirty, his face gaunt, like he'd been there for days. His chest was rising and falling in rapid breaths, but he wasn't moving. He was alive, but barely. The camera zoomed in on his face, holding there for what felt like an eternity. His eyes were wide, terrified. Then, just as suddenly as the video began, the screen went black again. For a moment, I thought it was over, but then white text appeared on the screen. "This is just the beginning." I froze, staring at the message. The video window closed itself out, and I was back at my desktop. The room felt suddenly cold, empty. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely move the mouse. What the hell had I just seen? I tried to return to the chat room to ask about the video, but it was gone, like it had never existed. The link was missing from my browser history, vanished. It was like I had imagined the whole thing. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the man's face in my mind, the fear in his eyes. Who was he? Was this real? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I tried to shake it off, tell myself it was a sick prank, but the images wouldn't leave my head. In the days that followed, strange things started to happen. My internet would randomly cut out. My computer would freeze for no reason. Emails started coming in, ones I didn't recognize. Strange strings of random letters and numbers. I never opened them, but they kept coming. And each time they felt like a warning. Then one night I received a message on my phone from an unknown number. It just said 2 words, "Click here." I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the link. My pulse quickened. I wasn't sure I wanted to see what came next, but I couldn't ignore it either. What had I gotten myself into? But I knew one thing. There was no way to turn back now. I didn't click. Not yet. But how do you stop something once you've already let it in? After the video, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was like a shadow had fallen over my life, following me around, lurking just out of sight. I tried to convince myself that it was all a fluke, a sick prank, nothing more, but I couldn't. The emails kept coming, more random numbers and letters. Every time I saw one, my stomach turned. A week passed, and the strange occurrences didn't stop. One evening I was sitting at my desk trying to distract myself with work, but my mind kept drifting back to that video. I kept thinking about the man tied up in that basement. Who was he? Why did they show me that? Suddenly my phone buzzed. It wasn't just a notification, it was a call. The number was blocked. My first instinct was to ignore it, let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaky. There was silence on the other end. I was about to hang up when I heard a voice, a low mechanical tone. "Are you watching?" My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" I stammered. "Check your inbox," the voice said, and the line went dead. I sat there for a moment trying to make sense of it. Slowly I turned to my computer. I opened my email, my hands trembling. There was a new message. The subject line was different this time, more direct. "Watch now." I didn't want to open it. Every instinct screamed at me to delete it, but I couldn't stop. I clicked the link. The video opened, and this time it was different. It wasn't shaky or dimly lit. It was clear, well lit. The camera was aimed at my living room. At first I thought it was some kind of mistake, but as the camera panned I recognized it. It was my living room. I felt my stomach drop. The camera zoomed in on the front door, then moved toward the hallway. My heart pounded as the camera approached the door to my office. My office just a few feet away from where I was sitting. The door handle slowly began to turn. I jumped up, slamming the door shut and locking it. I stood there, pressed against it, my ear to the wood, listening. Nothing, just silence. I looked back at my computer screen. The camera had stopped moving. It was focused on my office door, waiting. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I could barely hit the numbers, but just as I was about to press the call button, the screen went black, no response. My phone was dead. Panic set in. I needed to get out. I grabbed my car keys and rushed to the window. I pulled back the curtain and my blood ran cold. There, across the street, was a black SUV. Tinted windows. The kind of car you see in movies when someone's being watched. I stared at it, frozen. Had it been there the whole time? Were they watching me from outside too? I didn't know what to do. If I left, would they follow? Or was it all in my head? I pulled the curtain back down, my mind racing. I couldn't stay, but where could I go? The night dragged on in a blur of fear and paranoia. I kept checking the window, but the SUV didn't move. My phone stayed dead. My computer screen eventually went black. I was cut off, alone in my own home. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't safe anymore. It felt like I had lost control of everything. But when I went to check the house, everything seemed normal. The door was still locked, the windows untouched. It was like nothing had happened, but I knew it had. The fear was real. I packed a bag, preparing to leave. I couldn't stay here any longer. I had to get out, get somewhere safe, and figure this out. But deep down, one thought kept haunting me. What if this wasn't over? What if by clicking that link, I had opened a door that would never close? I never thought much about the dark web. Sure, I'd heard about it before, mostly rumors. Friends would joke about buying weird stuff online or finding bizarre communities, but I always brushed it off. To me, it sounded like urban legend material. But looking back, I wish I'd taken those jokes more seriously. Maybe then I'd have been more cautious. Maybe I'd have seen the warning signs. But no, it all started with an email, a job offer that seemed too good to be true. It was late one Saturday night, and I was in a bit of a financial crunch. My job as a graphic designer was barely covering the bills, and the freelance gigs were drying up faster than I could find new ones. I was stressed, desperate, so when an email came in from an unknown sender with the subject line, "Freelance Opportunity, Urgent Response Needed," I didn't hesitate. The email was simple, almost too simple. It read, "Hello Liam, we've come across your work online and believe you'd be a perfect fit for a project we're working on. The pay is $5,000 for a week's worth of work and will require full confidentiality. Please reply if you're interested, and we'll provide further details. Best regards, MJ." I stared at the email for a long moment, rereading it. The lack of details felt strange, but there was something about it that felt legit. They knew my name. They had seen my portfolio online. It wasn't completely out of the blue, but the whole thing still felt off. No company name, no website, just a single initial, but $5,000 for a week's work. That was too tempting. My debts were mounting, and this could be the break I needed. So I replied without thinking too much. "I'm interested." The response came almost immediately. "We're glad to hear it. We'll send the files tomorrow. Once you receive them, you'll need to sign a non-disclosure agreement. It's necessary for confidentiality." At that point, I felt like I was in too deep to back out. The next day, I received the files. They were encrypted, and the client provided a specific decryption key. I wasn't exactly a tech genius, but I knew enough to understand this wasn't just some ordinary job. Curiosity kicked in, and I decided to open the files. At first, they seemed harmless. Spreadsheets, charts, corporate-looking presentations. But then I started noticing things that didn't sit right. Some of the data was heavily redacted, names and dates blacked out. A few of the documents had cryptic notes in the margins, written in a language I didn't recognize. I felt uneasy. This wasn't just a standard business deal. There was something hidden here, something I didn't understand, and I didn't like it. A few days passed, and the job started to feel like it was consuming me. The more I worked on the files, the more I realized something was off. My instincts were telling me to stop, but I couldn't. There was too much at stake. The pay was huge. The more I dug into the documents, the more I could see that something wasn't just unusual, it was dangerous. One evening I received another email from MJ. This time it wasn't a progress check. It was short, direct. Do not contact anyone about this project. We know where you live. My blood ran cold. I hadn't told them where I lived. The email was proof they had access to my personal information. I wasn't just being paranoid anymore. This was real. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe it was just a sick threat. But as the days passed, the tension grew. That black SUV, the one I had spotted across the street from my apartment, was still there. Every day, tinted windows. It wasn't just a coincidence. They were watching me. One night I heard a noise outside my apartment. It was faint, like someone lightly tapping on my door. My heart stopped. I froze, listening intently. The tapping stopped, but my gut told me something wasn't right. I stood up, slowly approaching the door. Through the peephole I saw nothing. The hallway outside was empty. I opened the door, and there it was. A small envelope, plain, with my name written on it in black ink. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The message was brief. You are in too deep. Finish the job or you and your family will pay the price. That was it. I knew then that there was no turning back. I wasn't just working on a project anymore. I had become a pawn in something much bigger, and now they were threatening my family. I couldn't go to the police. Whoever these people were, they had resources I couldn't even imagine. They were watching me, tracking me, and they had control. I had no choice. I had to finish the job. I couldn't escape. Every day felt like walking on eggshells, knowing that they were out there, watching, waiting for me to slip up. The tension was unbearable. I barely slept. When I did, the nightmares came. Shadowy figures, that black SUV, and the cold, emotionless face of the man who had handed me the envelope. Then one day, just as I thought maybe they had forgotten about me, the black phone buzzed again. It was a text. The message was simple. Final task. Be ready. 9 p.m. I felt my stomach twist. The last task. What was it this time? What did they want from me? The hours dragged on. I couldn't eat. My mind kept replaying every moment since I started this job. The cryptic documents, the threats, the constant fear that had been gnawing at me for days. My nerves were shot, but I couldn't stop now. I had to do this. If I didn't, they'd make good on their threats. At 8:30 p.m., I grabbed my bag, threw in the essentials, and left my apartment for the last time. I couldn't look back. If I hesitated, it might cost me everything. I had no choice. I was already in too deep. The streets were eerily quiet as I walked toward the bus station. When I reached the terminal, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was it. I was leaving everything behind. My life, my family, my apartment. I was trying to outrun this nightmare. I reached the bus station and was about to board when the burner phone buzzed in my pocket. My heart skipped a beat. I knew it was them. I looked at the screen. We know what you're planning. You can't run from us. Panic surged through me. They knew how. I looked around. The station was crowded, but I saw no one suspicious. Was it a trick? Were they already here? I almost turned around, but I remembered the explosion, the threats. I couldn't stop now. I had to keep going. I stepped onto the bus, my heart pounding. I found a seat near the back, keeping my head down, trying to breathe. As the bus pulled away, I kept checking the road behind us. The black SUV had to be tailing me. But no, nothing. The road behind was empty. The further I went, the more I began to feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I had gotten away. The bus ride was long, hours ticking by. By the time we reached a small town, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had managed to slip through their fingers. For now, I stepped off the bus and walked into a small diner. The air was fresh, the kind that only small towns had, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. But even as I ordered my coffee, I couldn't ignore the phone sitting on the counter. I knew they'd contact me again. They were always watching, always waiting. For now, though, I was free. I didn't know how long it would last or what would happen next. But for the first time, I felt a small sense of peace. I'd escaped. I was no longer a pawn, and that's all I could ask for.